Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at the current edition of the North Coast Journal. My name is Ruby Cayenne. We are joined, as usual, by North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome, guys.
How you doing, Ruby?
Glad to see both of you here.
It's nice to both be here.
Well, we've got a pretty full lineup this week of some really exciting stuff. Thad, would you please tell us what's on the cover this week for the North Coast Journal?
Yeah, we have a story about kind of the juror response crisis that's going on in Humboldt County and has been for some years. For those of you unaware, you can add jury service to the list of things that Humboldt County is really, really bad at, apparently. Specifically, just responding to those jury summonses at all. Reporting the story, I found out that Humboldt County has the lowest response rate of jurors in the state and the highest rates of folks just failing to show up, failing to call, failing to just respond in any way to the jury summons. So according to data from the Judicial Council of California, which is the entity that oversees the courts, for both, I think it's 2019 through 2021, the latest years available, 62% of Humboldt County residents who got jury summonses just didn't show up, didn't call, didn't do anything. The state rate is, I think, about 10%. So it's, I mean, kind of a very drastic fail on the part of Humboldt County citizens to live up to kind of fulfilling this basic civic duty that really is the cornerstone of our criminal justice system. So looking at some of this data, I tried to catch up with somebody from the district attorney's office and somebody from the public defender's office, and then a judge to kind of talk about what the impacts are on the courts, and then also kind of what they see as some of the reasons that we're doing so badly at jury duty.
Wow, yeah, I didn't realize that as a county we were so far down there. I definitely have heard from friends and things being like, I have a jury summons and I'm not going, and to know that that's a countywide issue is definitely very interesting.
Yeah, and it's, so I should say that, not responding to your jury summons is you can be held in contempt of court. It's a violation of the law and is punishable. Being found in contempt of court is punishable by a fine of up to $1,500 and up to 5 days in jail. So, those penalties seem formidable. And I was also always, just kind of raised that jury duty is a thing you need to do. It's, if we want other people to show up, if one day we're wrongly accused, we need to show up for other people to fill this important role. But, anyway, yeah, I just assumed that everybody, even if they were going to try to get out of jury duty, would call and say that they had a trip planned or, something.
Isn't that one of the time-honored traditions of jury duty, is bragging to everybody about how you got out of it?
I mean, it seems like it, but we're not even doing that in Humboldt, apparently. So first of all, I mean, we're kind of making light, but it does have really real impacts on the court system, as I heard from from the folks I interviewed. And I mean, it's already having kind of impacts, but then we're at the point where it really is a crisis point. It risks, having to cancel trials and dismiss cases, which means sending, people accused of crimes home because the court can't meet, statutory deadlines of when they have a right to a speedy trial and whatnot. So, Luke Brownfield, the Humboldt County public defender, said that that we're kind of teetering on this precipice of it becoming a real problem. But he also raised the interesting issue that, part of that right that we all have to have a jury trial is to have a jury, of our peers, quote unquote, which is, interpreted in the law to be kind of a cross section of your community. And because of some of the reasons folks don't show up to jury duty, there's reason to believe right now the folks who do respond and do show up are not a representative cross section of our community. They're much more likely to be retired. They're much more likely to be state employees because the state actually pays their employees to go to jury duty, whereas most private employers do not. And they're more likely to be affluent, and folks who, have enough money to not worry about missing work for a few days or potentially a few weeks for responding to jury duty. So, from Luke's standpoint, Luke Brownfield, as the public defender, he was saying that he finds that the juries that are impaneled in Humboldt County tend to be more conservative than the average, group of 12 individuals in Humboldt County, and also whiter. So, that really raises some social justice issues about how jury trials are being decided and by whom. Then caught up with Deputy District Attorney Roger Reese, who had kind of a different view of some of the issues at play or some of the impacts. And his main thing was just that it creates a lot of, like, the court is already impacted with really high caseloads, and kind of more cases than courtrooms, and then employees of both the public defender's office and the district attorney's office are overworked with higher case rates than the American Bar Association advises. And so he was saying that it just creates kind of more inefficiencies in a system that's already kind of bursting at the seams. And so, when you have a delay because the court is having trouble putting together a jury for a trial, it means that the attorneys involved and the courtroom involved are all kind of tied up for additional time. And so it just builds in these inefficiencies to a system that kind of can't afford it already. So those are kind of all the various impacts. I talked to Judge Kelly Neal for a good while about kind of the reasons, trying to figure out the reason that Humboldt County's response rate is so low. Certainly part of it is economic. The state of California, or the state legislature, sets reimbursement rates. So, like, what folks get paid for jury duty, and spoiler alert, it's not much at all. So if you go to jury duty, the state will reimburse you $15 a day. So if, say you have a minimum wage job where you're getting 8 hours a day at $15 an hour, that's a huge financial sacrifice to then, trade that for $15 a day. And the state reimburses mileage. So you're traveling to and from court, but, only at 34 cents a mile. And, so in a county with a almost 20% poverty rate, that puts a huge burden on, right off the bat, at least 20% of our residents, and likely much more because the poverty rate is well below the living wage rate. So Judge Neal felt like that was really probably the primary factor. She also added that we're just a really rural county with 4,000 square miles, stretched over rugged terrain and some rough county roads. And so she said it's just asking a lot for somebody to commute, 40 miles each way or something like that to jury duty, especially when there's inclement weather and stuff. And I was talking to Jen actually earlier. I think a third factor that I didn't really get into the story because nobody talked to me about it, and it's really just kind of my guessing, but Humboldt County has been steeped for generations now in somewhat of an outlaw culture. And certainly the cannabis industry plays a prominent role in that. But also I think there's just a kind of rugged ethos here that maybe laws don't always apply. And so maybe there's a cultural barrier there too, to folks showing up to cast judgment on their peers.
Wow, yeah. Well said. Thank you for bringing these issues to light, because I do suspect that on the daily, people may not be thinking about all of these repercussions. Although, as you mentioned, having to do the traveling and that limited compensation, that is absolutely, I could see being a reason why someone would not want to make the effort to do that. But all of those other things you mentioned, like how it backs up the court system and how, these people who are in court really do rely on their quote unquote peers. I think that that's something that when I'm thinking about jury duty, I often am thinking about how I can incorporate that into my life and less about those larger implications. So I appreciate you a lot for bringing those up.
Yeah, absolutely, Ruby. The one thing I would kind of stress to people is that, at least in my personal experience, like the folks at jury services have been super understanding whenever I've called and said that I have, a scheduling conflict, or that I have a childcare issue, or there's a reason I can't go. But at least, by calling the number and talking to them, they know you're not going to show up. So the court isn't planning for 100 people to show up on a Wednesday only to find that, 12 do. They can kind of plan accordingly and call in other jurors if they need to. So I would kind of urge folks, if you have a financial hardship and can't serve because of it, that's a valid reason. But call the court and tell them. If you can't, travel to the courthouse because you're unable, call them and tell them. And it'll make the system operate a little bit smoother, even if you're not going to show up.
Absolutely. Well, definitely take that to note, and I hope that all the listeners really take that to heart and follow through with those responses. Well, do you have any final thoughts about this story?
No, not other than that we can do better than 62% of us failing to appear. Come on, Humboldt. Civic duty, step up.
Yeah, I know we're outlaws out here, guys, but I think that's something that's definitely worth prioritizing. Well, thank you so much for that story, Thad. And I highly suggest that people pick up the journal and read the complete story to really get that ingrained about why that is so important. Well, okay. Moving on, we have some interesting information about the Harbor District going on. Thad, would you talk about that briefly for us?
Yeah, definitely. This was a story that kind of started to develop late last week. We heard rumblings about it, and then the Humboldt Bay Harbor Commission posted the agenda for its meeting on Thursday, and it includes a kind of a massive, what's called a project labor agreement, or a draft project labor agreement, for work that's going to be done to transform the old Hope Mill site on the peninsula into kind of a state-of-the-art heavy lift marine terminal that's going to be needed to service and build the wind farm that's proposed to go 20 miles offshore. And so what this labor agreement is kind of sets out the parameters for who's going to work on the project, not the wind farm itself, but the harbor or the marine terminal project, and what all the particulars of that are, how many of them are going to be union workers, how many of them aren't, the opportunities for non-union shops to work at the site, and some community benefit aspects to it. And so this was an agreement that was really negotiated in private between the Harbor District and the Trades Council, which both its local entity and its statewide entity, and that's a union that represents about 14 smaller unions here in Humboldt County that do everything from, plumbing work to sheet metal to fabrication. But kind of once this document came out, some folks with the Humboldt Builders Exchange, an organization that represents 300 kind of construction-related businesses here, voiced some kind of big concerns, saying, they felt like they and other voices should have been involved in negotiating this process from earlier on. And they question whether the agreement skews too union friendly and will really make it hard for any non-unionized outfits in Humboldt to participate in a way that's beneficial. So the Harbor District the Harbor Commission, is going to be meeting on Thursday, August 10th at the Wharfinger Building in Eureka to discuss it. The Builders Exchange has asked them to delay a vote on it for 30 days, but there seems to be some urgency to get the matter settled. So.
Wow, that's super interesting and super pertinent, as most of the content you guys do is to our area, but especially for people who are labor workers, hands-on workers. So definitely give that a read if you're involved, if your family's involved, or even if not, just so that you know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. The last thing I'll say on is the labor agreement also provides some assurances and incentives for a pre-apprenticeship program designed to kind of funnel people either switching careers or even just straight out of high school into kind of a trades program that would prepare them to work on the project and others like it. So it really does, should be of interest to just about everybody in Humboldt County. Certainly that project has the potential anyway to really be an economic game changer for the region.
Wow. Yeah. So definitely, folks out there, read up on that, and especially if that's something of interest to you, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was another great story synopsis from you, Thad. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Ruby.
Okay, let's turn now to Jennifer for what's happening on the Arts and Features beat. We've got some really cool stuff.
Yes, and as always, it's just as serious and weighty as Thad's. I'd like to start by talking about SpongeBob SquarePants. Speaking of our waters, if you don't know that SpongeBob was created by an HSU alum, Stephen Hillenberg, who sadly died in 2018 of ALS, then I don't know, do you live under a rock? Perhaps a pineapple? The SpongeBob empire, while creating, honestly, some very historic gifts, has also created a musical that has been traveling around the world. There's I was looking online, there's a whole UK tour. People love the sponge. And anyway, the Humboldt Light Opera Company, which typically does big summer productions with tons of people on stage, 40, 50 people doing these big production numbers with lots of costuming and everything, are doing the SpongeBob musical, which means they've got super colorful sets and costumes, and people are starfish, people are sponges, people are underwater squirrels. So Dave Jervis went because I called him first for it because I was like, who loves SpongeBob? Dave Jervis. After you've had a couple kids of the right age, you might have had enough SpongeBob. But Dave Jervis is ready for more. So he went and he actually really loved the show. And it's worth noting that some of the people who wrote songs for this, let me see his list so I don't leave anybody off, includes Cyndi Lauper, who actually did the music for the Kinky Boots show that was just in Ferndale. They Might Be Giants, What Up 80s Nerds, John Legend, and Sarah Bareilles, another Humboldt local, and I believe the best Humboldt celebrity, according to our recent Best of Issue. So anyway, that's a really fun show to go see at the Van Duzer. And anyway, there's all stuff in there on how to get your tickets and everything like that. Speaking of entertainment, I would also like to point everybody to the middle-ish of the paper this week, the physical paper. We have the return of nightlife. Not nightlife, but the nightlife grid. Do you remember, before the pandemic started, long ago, we used to have club gigs all over the place? They've returned in force. And so the nightlife grid, which is a bunch of boxes showing you, you can sort of plan your night by going by date and looking across a gridded calendar, has returned to our paper, our physical paper, and you can once again plan your assault on the county by opening up the grid. I used to see lots of people of an evening opening up the paper at a pizza parlor or whatever and just sort of looking down and thinking okay, where are we going? And I'm happy to see that returning. So there's that. There's an art exhibit that I want to make sure to mention. Ruth Arrieta is showing these very cool interiors at the Morris Graves, and Gabrielle Gopinath, formerly our steady art beat writer, has returned because she's excited about this show. She's returned, just for a couple stories here and there. But I'm happy to have her back in our pages. And she is writing about this cool show that has lots of joyful interiors, which is nice when you think about the fact that, so much important art hurts to look at and is about painful things. And, it's hard to make joy important. And Ruth Arrieta has these beautiful interiors, sometimes with pets, that are just really full of sweetness. And she plays with perspective and other things. And I just want to encourage people to go see it because we also need joy. And these are joyful, sweet, quiet paintings that you can go see and let them transport you.
Those events, as I'll call them, are such a great diverse mix of different things. We've got some kind of shows, some theater-y type things, but also stuff more on the quiet side. And what I love that you mentioned is that they're all so joyful. And that's really exciting. And I'm also personally so grateful to have the grid back because that was how we would plan our weekends every weekend growing up. We'd refer to the North Coast Journal and, like you said, go down the list. And if I'm missing it, I'm sure that lots of our readers and viewers are also missing it. So
now you're all going to see Ruby out clubbing again. Say hi. Oh, but I have a thing for, I don't know how much time we have left, but I have a couple of recommendations for when you go to outdoor events. This week, I wrote about a couple of stands, stand and truck. Summer is the time, summer through fall is really our primo time for festivals and things like that. And, the Friday night markets are going in Eureka. There's more and more food trucks are around and setting up for farmers markets and things like that. And that includes, I don't know if you've seen it, but the Caps Food Shack truck. Have you seen that around, Ruby?
No, what is that?
So it is a pub food truck. It's like semi-schmancy, handmade, and very like made from scratch burgers and things. And when I say made from scratch, I mean like they're making the aioli, they're making the barbecue sauce, they're making the crumb coating for their fried pickles and things like that. So everything is like homemade and delightful. Controversial point, Cap's Food Shack truck, which is soon to be posted up by Crisp on Broadway as their usual home, and then maybe traveling around and doing more events here and there. They make their fried pickles in planks, not coins.
I love that. I love that.
And they are crunchy breaded rather than beer batter.
Oh my gosh.
Look at that, just stone-faced, not a fried pickle guy.
Oh no.
No, not a good impartial juror for the fried pickle. Anyway, one of the things I really enjoyed from them was, of course, the fried pickle, but also a cherry barbecue burger, which was very nice. And I also went over to the, I went to the Street Art Festival, which is fantastic. All this art everywhere, but what did I do? I ate. So I went to the block party under the Samoa Bridge, which, like, if you had told me, like, meet me under the Samoa Bridge, we'll get something to eat, it sounds sketchy, but it was awesome. And I had arepas. Have you had arepas?
Yes, see.
Yes. Oh, wait, that's right, because your family, right? Your family's an arepa family, maybe?
It's Cuban.
Oh, Cuban, I'm sorry. There were plantains. I got confused. So anyway, the wonders of the arepa are there for you to explore. Weparepa is the name of the business, and wepa is like the exclamation of joy, like the woo-hoo of many Spanish-speaking countries. And yeah, that's right, woo-hooers around the world unite. Graziella, Grazabel Nani, who is the owner of the business, is there as a one-woman show making the arepas. And it's basically like, the way I explained it to my kids is like, if you made a pupusa, like the masa patty, and then you just went too far. Instead of stuffing it and then grilling it, you grill a patty of masa, in her case, multicolored, colored by vegetables and very pretty. And then once it kind of puffs up, you split it open and stuff it, and then you kind of use it the way you would like a tortilla or a pita, and stuff it with wonderful things. Some of them, including, like, they have cool names. One of them is named after Venezuela's Miss Universe from 1955. It's awesome. They're delightful, and she's at a couple of different farmers markets most weekends, but it's something to check out.
Definitely. I will have to check her out. And I need to go see all the new street art. Natalie Arroyo has been posting on her Instagram all the pictures of it. And so I'm like, oh, that looks so pretty, but I got to go see it in person. So, yeah. Well, thank you for that so much, Jennifer. And that's about all the time that we have for this week. It was so many great stories that we were trying to fit them all in, but definitely go pick up the actual paper. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is on newsstands now, so go and get it and read more about all these amazing things and all these important things that are going on. You can also find it 24/7 at thenorthcoastjournal.com. That and Jennifer, thank you very much.